Maulana. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك وأتوجه إليك بنبيك نبي الرحمة محمد صلى الله عليه وآله يا أبا القاسم يا رسول الله يا إمام الرحمة يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا أمير المؤمنين يا علي بن أبي طالب يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا فاطمة الزهراء يا بنت محمد يا قرة عين الرسول يا سيدتنا ومولاتنا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيحة عند الله اشفعي لنا عند الله يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها المجتبى يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا عبد الله يا حسين بن علي أيها الشهيد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا علي يا ابن الحسين يا زين العابدين يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها الباقر يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا عبد الله يا جعفر بن محمد أيها الصادق يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا موسى بن جعفر أيها الكاظم يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن موسى أيها الرضا يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها التقي الجواد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن محمد أيها الحادي النقي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها الزكي العسكري يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا وسي الحسن والخلف الحجة أيها القائم المنتظر المهدي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. حاجات. يا سادتي وموالي إني توجهت بكم أئمتي وعدتي ليوم فقري وحاجتي إلى الله وتوسلت بكم إلى الله واستشفعت بكم إلى الله فاشفعوا لي عند الله واستنقذوني من ذنوبي عند الله فإنكم وسيلتي إلى الله وبحبكم وبقربكم أرجو نجاة من الله فكونوا عند الله رجائي يا سادتي يا أولياء الله صلى الله عليهم أجمعين ولعن الله أعداء الله ظالميهم من الأولين والآخرين آمين يا رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الفاتحة. بسم الله.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل اللهم فاطر السماوات والأرض عالم الغيب والشهادة أنت تحكم بين عبادك فيما كانوا فيه يختلفون صدق الله العلي العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Tuesday night, Dua Tawassul was recited. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the Tawassul of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of your hajat, all those present here and all those watching online, and our community in general. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fulfill all of their hajat, inshallah. And while doing the Tawassul to Ahlul Bayt, we continue to make dua for those who are suffering and struggling all around the globe, especially in Lebanon, in Palestine, and other many parts of the world. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect all the mu'mineen and mu'minat. The verse that I recited is ayat number 46 from Surah Zumar. We discussed ayat number 45 last week, and inshallah tonight we will discuss this ayat 46, very briefly of course. In this ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses by saying, say, Qul to the Prophet, that, O Allah, originator of the heavens and the earth, knower of the sensible and the unseen, you will judge between your servants concerning that about which they used to differ. When we look at this ayat, it sort of reminds us of many of the du'as that we make. Many of the du'as that we make begin with the word Allahumma. One of the reasons why the du'as are beginning with the word Allahumma or Allahumma or Rabbi Rahmumma or Rabbana and so on and so forth is because Ma'asumeen, while they taught us these du'as, they began without Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Not intentionally, but not to not include Bismillah in the beginning, because this is a hadith from a Ma'asum which says, whoever begins any work without saying Bismillah, that act, that amal will remain incomplete. So when you start something, كُلُّ أَمْرٍ ذِي بَالٍ لَمْ يُذْكَرْ بِبِسْمِ or لَمْ يَبْدَأ بِبِسْمِ فَهُوَ أَبْتَرٌ. Any work that begins without Bismillah mentioned in the beginning remains incomplete. So that is not the reason why Ma'asumeen are deliberately missing it. They're not reciting Bismillah in the beginning or the way we are taught. For example, you recite Dua Tawassul. Did you see Bismillah in the beginning? We recited it on our own, but the dua itself does not begin with the word Bismillah. Similarly, Dua Kumail or Hadith Kisa or other Dua Samat or Dua Nudba or any other dua that you take it. Pick up all the duas. None of them begin with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We add Bismillah in the beginning of it. Or we add the durood or Allahumma salli Muhammad wa ala in the beginning of it. The reason is because Quran begins with Bismillah, and in order to keep this reverence to Quran and to keep the kalam of Ma'asumeen separate from Quran, they did not start with Bismillah. Otherwise, the kalam of Ma'asumeen is at the height where people might confuse between the kalam of Ma'asum and kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So one indication is that it begins without the mention of Bismillah in the beginning. But we know that these adiyah or the du'as that we recite, they all begin with Allahumma, which is the same thing. In the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or Rabbana, O our Lord. So this ayat is sort of like a dua. Qul, Prophet say, Allahumma, indeed Allah, Fatira samawati wal ard, He is the originator of the heavens and the earth. See how Allah mentions heavens before He mentions the earth. There's a reason behind it. Alim al-ghaybi wa shahada. He's aware of that which is ghaib, unseen, and shahada, which is present. Anta tahkumu. O Allah, you judge bayna ibadika, between your servants, fima kanu fihi yakhtalifun, that which they used to dispute amongst themselves. Here, when we look at this ayat, we find that when God presented the evidence that, things about the creation, things about, manifesting His hikmat and wisdom into things, and when Anbiya were sent to go ahead and explain monotheism, they did not consider it. When Allah sent admonitions, they did not take heed. They continued to remain oblivious of it, and they did not want to pay much attention to it. He commanded his prophet to submit them to divine judgment so they may receive what they deserve. He said, قُلِ اللَّهُمَّ فَاتِرَ السَّمَوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. O Allah, creator of the heavens and the earth, and the originator of the heavens and the earth, عَالِمَ الْغَيْبِ وَالشَّهَادَةِ, knower of what is hidden and what is apparent to all the creation and what they may witness, and know أَن تَتَحْكُمَ بَيْنَ إِبَادِكَ, on the day of judgment you will judge between the people in these things which they used to dispute in the worldly matters or the religious matters or other matters, and you will settle their disputes with justice concerning the rights and the grievances. This is also a message of, basharat, glad tidings to mu'mineen. Those who may be suffering and constantly say that, why is it that we have brought iman, yet we are suffering? Why is it that those who disbelieve in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are enjoying everything? This is where the relief is given to you. That Allah is aware of the unseen as well as that which is apparent. Allah knows what is hidden and what is not. Allah can see. You and I, amongst ourselves, many things that we do in front of each other, it is known to us. For example, since I came here, what have I done? Or at home, my family knows what I've been doing since morning. Or at work, my colleagues know what I've been doing since morning. But beyond that, do you have any idea what else did I do all day long? Do you have any idea what else I did all day long? No. People don't know. Generally, people don't know. While Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, has the knowledge of the unseen, not just regarding you, but as well as everything else. So this is sort of serving as a glad tidings for the believers, for victory and success as well. That Allah knows. He sees everything which is apparent to you and which is not apparent to you. So don't worry about it. Therefore, it becomes the duty of the religious preachers and the divine leaders who face stubborn believers should always seek help from Allah through remembrance of Him. قُلِ اللَّهُمَّ. So Rasulullah was facing a challenge. These people in his time were not listening to him. They were not paying heed. They were not, taking this admonition seriously. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does Rasulullah do? He refers it back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He seeks help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the remembrance. And therefore it is important. While we find the preachers of today, they might be questionable as far as their amal is concerned. But as far as the amal of our Prophet is concerned, amal of our imams are concerned, they're not questionable. Therefore, those who are representing them in the form of the preachers, there's a very beautiful hadith from Amirul Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam, who said, Al-alimu man shahidat bisihhati aqwalihi af'aluh. Alim, a scholar, is one whose actions testify the truthfulness of his words. The truthfulness of, if I am a talib-e-ilm, you consider me as a talib-e-ilm, but those who are ulama, their words, the truthfulness of their actions testify as far as their words. Words, anyone can utter the words. Anyone can stand here and say the most beautiful words. But through the actions of that person who's uttering these beautiful words is what you find that this person is worthy to be followed. So religious preachers and divine leaders, whenever they face stubborn disbelievers, what should they do? They should seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the presence of those who have turned their hearts away from Allah and detest mentioning His name. Remember last discussion, ayat number 45. We use the word ishma'azzat. As soon as the name of Allah is mentioned, as soon as the dhikr of religion and deen is done, right away they turn off. They sort of, doze off and they zone out of it. And they're no longer interested in it. I gave the example, if I start talking about things of your interest, like football and other things of your interest, right away you'll be like, oh, this is something which is, interesting he's saying. or anything which is interesting to you, can attract you, right away you'll pay attention to it. But when it comes to the religious matters, no matter how many times you repeat them, as if it is falling on deaf ears. We talked about it last week. Similarly over here, the beginning and the end, it says, those in the presence of those who've turned their hearts away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and detest mentioning His name, we should turn our attention to Allah. In fact, you say, well, disbelievers discussion, right? How does that relate to us? When you stand up in salat, physically, what is your direction? Qibla, right? This is northeast, 58 degrees, facing to Makkah and Qibla. But that's your physical tawajjuh toward Qibla, so that everybody faces in the same direction. There's this unified ibadat that is being done, facing towards Qibla. Where's the heart facing? That's the issue. Where is our heart? Is it also facing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The physical facing is facing the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that we have a sense of direction. But the heart has a sense of direction as well. Is the heart also in the direction of the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? No, the heart is facing the ma'bud directly. When you stand up facing Qibla, his physical being is facing the Qibla, but your spiritual being is facing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your tawajjuh is towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This ayat is talking about those who used to turn their hearts away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Guess what? When we stand up for prayers, we make sure that our lanes are straight. We make sure that we're standing shoulder to shoulder. We make sure that we face in the direction of Qibla. But the moment we say Allahu Akbar, our hearts start wandering around. Goes from our house to our work, to my dealing, to my money, to my wealth, to my children, to what am I going to eat next. All these thoughts, or if there's something which is occupying your mind, which is troubling you, thoughts are coming into your mind. The moment these thoughts gather in your mind, in your wujud, guess what? You have turned yourself away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What happens if you physically turn away from the Qibla? Namaz is batil. So if I'm facing Qibla and someone calls my name or someone tries to attract me and I turn in their direction, what happened to my salat? Salat is batil because I turned away from the Qibla. But when my heart turns away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's no longer mutawajjih towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you think the salat is still valid? Yeah. When you ask the fuqaha, salat is still valid in a sense that you have offered the salat with all the conditions that are fulfilled. The conditions and the sihat of salat is there. But how good is this salat where the heart is not mutawajjih toward Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The beginning and the end of existence are from Him, from Allah. And so why some people are delighted with anything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? As the ayah said, min dunihi idha hum yastabshirun. While Allah is what? Fatir as-samawati wal ard. God's judgment on the day of resurrection will be based on His knowledge both of the visible and the unseen, as the ayat of Quran mentioned. A lot of people might say, well, I didn't do that. I did that when nobody was watching me. Yes, guess what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was watching you. The creation of the heavens is more significant than the creation of the earth. And that is the reason Allah mentions Fatir as-samawat first and then the earth. Wherever there is a mention of creation of the heavens and the earth, Allah mentions heavens before He mentions the earth. The reason is, heavens are more significant than the creation of the earth. Also, highlighting the aspect, the worldly life is insignificant. The life in the heavens is more significant. Thus, the same way Allah prefers heaven over the earth because of the significance, the life on this earth is also insignificant. And therefore, don't invest too much when this life is concerned. God's knowledge of both the unseen and the seen is equal. Alim al-ghaybi wa shahada. Despite all their differences, people are what? Is still the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's one aspect of unification. And we all might have differences. Different people in the world, different belief system that all exist. Ibadaka fima kanu fihi yakhtalifun, as the ayah says. But what unites us all? That we are all the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The disagreement between the polytheist and the monotheist will always exist. And let's move away from that difference. As the Quran tries to bring everybody on board, فَقُلْ تَعَالَوْا, come, عَلَى كَلِمَةٍ سَوَاءٍ بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَكُمْ, come, gather on this common word between ourselves. And in fact, when it comes to within our madhab as well, we might have ikhtilafat with our brothers in Ahl Sunnah. We might have ikhtilafat with other sects within the religion of Islam. The 6 imamis, the shish imamis, we have ikhtilaf with them. They believe in 6 imams, and they should believe. We believe in 12 imams. Then we have ikhtilaf with those who are followers of other sects within the religion of Islam. These ikhtilafat will exist. There's nothing wrong with that if the ikhtilafat are there, as long as you're able to consider yourself all to be the ibad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فِيمَا كَانُوا فِيهِ يَخْتَلِفُونَ. There's a whole lot of discussion about it, that one of the great calamities in human life is the presence of disagreements. And one of the greatest things about the human life is the presence of disagreements. When you have disagreements, it leads to new thoughts. It leads to, productivity. It leads to new ideas. So therefore, it's a good thing. But when there's disagreement and then becomes stagnant, then what there's conflict, there's division, there's hostilities, there's distrust, and these things dominate human societies. So you have the ugly side of it, and you have the good side of it. Inshallah, we'll discuss that more next time around. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq to be able to follow the commands and the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhi wassalatu wassalam, understand Quran, and make Quran to be part of our daily life. Akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum ya Rasulullah, assalamu alaikum ya Nabi Allah, assalamu alaikum ya Habib Allah, assalamu alaikum ya Khiratullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, assalamu alaikum ya Abdullah, assalamu alaikum ya Rasulullah, assalamu alaikum wa ala jaddika wa abik, wa ala ummika wa akhik wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, assalamu alaikum ya gharib wal ghuraba, assalamu alaikum mu'in ad-du'afa wal fuqara, assalamu alaikum shams al-shumus wa anis al-nufus, ayyuha al-madfun bi'ard al-tus, Ali ibn Musa al-Rada wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, assalamu alaikum sahib al-asr wa zaman, imam al-insi wal jan, assalamu alaikum sharik al-Quran, ajjalallahu ta'ala farajak, سهل الله مخرجك وظهورك وجعلنا من أعوانك وانصارك ورحمة الله وبركاته.